Hey everyone, this is Corinna Bench from my kitchen in Elmore at Shared Legacy Farms. This is our CSA coach, Cadie Jardin, and we are here today to do a quick tutorial for you. We're going to teach you how to make your own vegetable stock using kitchen scraps, leftovers, the tops of your veggies, so that you don't have to waste a thing.
Basically, this is a way to make something that's super nutrient dense with things that you may have otherwise just composted or even thrown in your trash. So it's a great way to kind of use up a lot of those veggies and make something that's super healthy and nutritious for your family. You don't need a lot of equipment either. So you basically just need some sort of stock pot, but we need a stock pot and a strainer. And that's pretty much all the kitchen equipment that you need. The other option is you can also use a crock pot or a slow cooker. Really isn't going to make a difference, except that if maybe you have to run out and run some errands, you might want to use the crock pot instead of leaving your stove on. But other than that, it's going to take about the same amount of time. I really consider there to be 3 basic or main ingredients, but just know that there's no scientific method to this. Every batch of my broth is different, although they kind of taste similar, but there may be different colors, different nutrients, all that good stuff. But for the most part, you want to try to have some carrots, some celery, and some onions. Sometimes you want to try to have equal proportions of those things. Otherwise, you might have a taste that kind of outpowers the others, and it might not let you use your broth in the variety that you want to use it later on. So you want to try to have equal parts. And then it gets kind of fun, because then you get to use all your veggie scraps. And these are from your freezer, right?
They are. I've been collecting the tops of things. And you just,
so what do you got in there?
So we have all types of fun stuff. So when you are cutting and chopping and prepping your vegetables, you should think about, can I throw that in my veggie scrap bag in the freezer? And basically this is going to be good for 6 to 8 months in your freezer, so you can just continue to throw stuff in there, although it'll probably build up a little bit faster than that. Yeah. Onion skins are on top. Onion skins are something, it kind of makes me sad when people throw these away, because they are actually the most antioxidant rich part of the vegetable. So most of the antioxidants in an onion are actually in the first couple layers, including that first layer of skin. The tops of celery we have, sometimes if I cut off like the top and the bottom of a butternut squash, I'll throw it in there. You've got some carrot tops in here. Pretty much anything. We'll go over some things that you don't want to use. But tops of vegetables, greens, skins, garlic, peel, the skin from garlic. There's a lot of different stuff that can go in here. Don't be nervous. The only time you want to be cautious is if you notice that your whole bag is maybe onion peels, or your whole bag is maybe carrot tops. Because the larger variety, the better it's probably going to taste, and you're not going to have one thing outpower the rest. So a lot of good stuff can go in here. I don't see leek tops in here, but that's another really great thing that people tend to throw away, where most of the nutrients are in that dark colored leek top, so you don't want to throw that away. That's a great thing that you can save for broth too.
Yeah, sure. Well, we just dump it in then, right?
Yeah, so we are just going to dump this in the top right here, and then we are going to chop up some of these veggies, and I'm not going to actually be that great about chopping them, because we are going to strain all of this out. So because this is such a large pot and we're going to take the time to make stock, we're going to add more vegetables than just our scrap bag, so we can kind of make the most of our time here.
So there are some carrot tops in here, and there's a few of them that are kind of brown and crinkly. Like, what's the quality level got to be of these things that you put in here? You don't want stuff that's rotting or...
Right. So ideally, before you add things to your scrap bag or before you freeze them, you're going to wash them. It's going to be hard to wash something, obviously, when it's frozen. So you want to make sure you wash whatever you're throwing in that bag, and that way you don't have to worry about it. You don't want to use anything that's moldy or rotten. When things are kind of getting close to that point, or notice they're starting to wilt, or you're not going to be able to use them, you could throw them in the freezer. But once your greens are kind of mushy and wet and wilted, I wouldn't throw them in your scrap bag.
And I also noticed that you're putting them in real big. I mean, these are big chunks. This is not taking a lot of time.
Not taking a lot of time. This is taking under 10 minutes to kind of throw this stuff in here.
I love that.
And to be honest with you, if we had like 2 veggie scrap bags, I don't even know that I would add a lot of these, you know, a lot of these other veggies. I am going to cut the carrots just a little bit because they'll take longer to cook anyways. So we'll cut those in a little bit smaller pieces. So that's our vegetables. You know, we've got carrots, celery, onions, and then her scrap bag, which is a large variety of stuff. I also like to make sure that we add some seasonings to it. Now, you might want to be a little bit cautious depending on what your plan is for this broth. If you know that you're going to be making some soup with it, you could add some more savory herbs like sage and thyme, a bay leaf, you know, that type of thing. If you're not really sure what you're going to do with it, I'd probably just stick to the basics, like maybe some garlic, some salt, some pepper, and that way it allows you, you know, more options later on that we'll kind of talk about how to use your broth. So we're going to throw in some garlic, including the skin.
Use the skin, okay.
Yeah, definitely use the skin. It's so sad when that kind of gets thrown away. That's where the vegetable really creates kind of a lot of its natural sunscreen to protect itself. And that vegetable sunscreen that it's created is really protective inside of us. So it's a really potent way to get some antioxidants in. So we've got, we'll add some salt.
So what are we talking here, like a teaspoon?
I would say a teaspoon to a tablespoon.
Okay.
I don't use a lot of salt when I'm making vegetable broth because depending on the food that I'm going to mix it with or make later, I like to salt it then so I can kind of taste it. So you don't want it to be super salty. I'm also going to throw in a few peppercorns, not even going to grind them up. Those of you that use peppercorns know that they can be super concentrated, so we won't use a ton of those either, and that way we can kind of season it when we go to use it.
That looks like about a teaspoon.
About a teaspoon. Yeah. Parsley is a really good thing to add. Bay leaf. Some people will add like basil. You can even save the stems of a lot of the fresh herbs that you use. So like cilantro, if you cut off the leaves of cilantro, you can throw those stems in your scrap bag. So don't be scared to kind of pile that stuff together and get crazy in your kitchen with your broth. So we have halfway, maybe a little halfway full of vegetables here, and we're just gonna cover it with water. Super, super easy. And then while this is filling up, we could also kind of talk about things you might want to be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah, what should you
adding.
put in there?
So if you're just using this as a way to use up a bunch of scraps and you don't care what color it is, there are some things that can make it a little bit darker. Like a lot of the skins of like potatoes or beets or something like that can make it darker and almost cloudy sometimes. So you want to be cautious with those things. Potatoes and turnips can also make it really cloudy and kind of a little bit more mushy. The consistency can change. So I would be really cautious. I probably wouldn't add potatoes or turnips. There's also some vegetables that can make it really bitter, especially the longer you let it simmer. So we want to be cautious with things like zucchini, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Beets can kind of really change the taste a little bit.
I made that mistake a few weeks ago when we put in some turnip greens because I was so excited about learning this skill. And I was making a ton of broth and I'm like, I'm gonna use everything. And so I had the tops of turnips, these little white salad turnips, and I just threw them all in there with, you know, with some of these other items. And you could tell it tasted kind of turnipy, and actually my boys. Our boys didn't like the soup that we made that night, so we did not, that was not a family favorite. So I learned that lesson the hard way, so.
Yeah, if you're not sure, I mean, you could always try adding a little bit, but anytime you add a lot of something, you're really risking changing the overall taste of the broth. So I'd be cautious with the zucchini, the Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cabbage, turnips, potatoes. Beets will also obviously change the color a lot and also really make it cloudy. So we're going to bring this to a boil. We're going to turn it down and let it simmer. 45 minutes, I would say. You could let it go up to 2 hours. If you were using a crock pot, you would just set it on high, wait for it to boil, and then once you noticed it was boiling, turn it down to low. Again, just 45 minutes to 2 hours. So you can see all this great stuff in here has been simmering for a little while. And we have the strainer just sitting on top of a pot here. Obviously, we're not going to let it all...
You probably want to let it cool too, right?
Yeah, you want it to be a little bit manageable. Obviously, you don't want to burn yourself. I tend to let it cool and sit for a little bit, and then I strain it if I know that I like the taste at that moment, because if we let those veggies set in the broth longer and cool, sometimes that can also change the taste a little bit. So you just want to be careful, use caution. So now this could go into your compost pile. If you wanted to, if you like those cooked carrots, you could always grab them out of there, I guess. I don't see why you couldn't. But now we've got this amazing big pot of broth. And then you have some different options as far as storage goes. If you wanted to store it in large amounts, you could put it in a mason like this and store it in the refrigerator for 7 to 10 days. Or really any container, I guess, that you wanted to. You could also freeze it. So you obviously want to let it cool before you go and store it in the refrigerator or the freezer, but if you were going to put it in the freezer, you could store it in freezer bags. So small ones like this, or like the larger ones, you could, depending on how much room you have, you want to make sure you store them flat, and that way you don't take up all the room in your freezer. Make sure you date it. So you can store it in bags. I actually really like to freeze mine in a silicone like ice cube tray like this. So I freeze them in little cubes, wait till they're frozen, and then I put them in a Ziploc bag like this. And that way I can just grab 1 or 2 out as I need them.
Yeah, that's great.
Just for like flavoring food or cooking other things if I want. So
yeah, and I wanted to show the different colors, because this is a really great example. I don't know what I put in here, but you can see how much darker mine is in comparison to this one. This one probably had some,
yeah.
This might have been one of my earlier batches before I
So I probably in this one, I'm assuming that I was probably making like chicken soup or something, and I probably didn't have a lot of greens in there. I was probably trying to keep it a little bit clearer. So more just a basic carrot, celery, onion, garlic type stock.
Yeah.
So yeah, color, don't be scared if it's a darker color. You know, it's kind of learning experience when it comes to making broth. So whatever happens, happens. It's not going to be bad for you. If anything, it probably just has a lot more goodness.
Right.
So how do you use this?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, soups. Stews obviously are going to be a fantastic way. Anytime you're cooking anything in your kitchen that needs some liquid where you might have used water, I would experiment with using some broth, because it often enhances the flavor, and it also really increases the nutrient density of the food you're making. So things like rice or quinoa or couscous, risotto or stuffing, anytime you need some liquid, you could grab a couple of cubes out and use those. I sometimes like simmer some veggies, you know, in a cube of broth. I let it thaw and just simmer it. It really makes the flavor so much better. You don't even have to add a lot of seasonings at that point. Reheating food is another big one. If you have some cold stir fry or some casserole you want to reheat, you can just grab a little bit of your broth and reheat it. You're adding some vitamins, you're adding some antioxidants, and you're also not going to make it a little bit more bland with any water. Poaching fish, I have never done it myself, but I've had some people say that poaching fish in broth really makes the flavor a lot better and doesn't take away from the fish at all. Or basting meat in the oven. So instead of using water to kind of keep it moist, if you don't have a lot of juice at the bottom of the pan, you can also, you know, use a little bit of your broth. And then my favorite thing is when you're sick. So you have these like nutrient-dense cubes in your freezer, thawing them out, warming them up with a little bit of water, and sipping on it instead of some tea, or if you're sick of tea, sipping on broth is like a nutrient bomb for your immune system. It's really going to give you that boost. It's also really soothing, you know, and for the most part it tastes pretty good. So I really like people sipping on some broth when they feel like they're getting sick. So you can head over to sharedlegacyfarms.com/veggiestock. sharedlegacyfarms.com/veggiestock and get your own guide to making veggie broth at home.
Yeah. Well, this has been really helpful.
Very exciting.
Thanks for joining us. Hit subscribe so that you can see more of these trainings as they happen. And again, get that freebie at sharedlegacyfarms.com/veggiestock or sign up for our CSA at sharedlegacyfarms.com. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you.